everyone, and welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to make a bag that I'm seeing everywhere. Everyone's making this bag, and it's such a good one. It's so much fun. It's perfect for February. It's perfect all year, but especially for February. Today, we're going to make the Heartbreaker crossbody from K.Azcona Designs. And the reason I'm flipping this around is because we're doing a fun little play on it, where we're going to have a clear window in the center with some sparkles. And it's so stinking cute. So besides this being an adorable bag, this is also the B-Box kit for February. And you have options. So I'm going to show you. I've actually made this. You can see over back here. I made it as a wristlet, which is actually a great small crossbody. And then I also made it as the large crossbody. So you can make either one. If you're going to make the wristlet, you can actually make a couple of them, but you'll need to use a couple of your own material as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. But this is the bag. It is a crossbody bag. It is a beautiful big zipper all the way around. I have seen so many tutorials out there. A couple of my favorite are from Kasaya, from Saya Swag, and Amber from the Crafty Reporter. They have been making this bag and they have been adjusting it. There's modifications to put the zipper in the middle. There are so many modifications to this bag, but I decided, which is kind of strange for me, I decided to stick with the pattern today, with the original pattern. I figure everybody else is doing the modifications. I really like the original pattern. So that's what we're gonna do. So you can see this is a very generous size crossbody bag with the beautiful heart shape. We have this detail in the front here, but you don't have to do the clear vinyl. If you don't want, you could just do the regular pink vinyl. And then on the back, we have just the regular back. When we open up this bag, I love how this bag opens up. I love how big it opens up. So see, when you open the bag, if you do this version, you open the flap and it goes like all the way open. So that is just so much fun. This is great as a craft bag, especially because of that feature. You can really see everything inside. And on the inside, we have this beautiful lining pocket, which is so fun. And look at that lining. Isn't that lining just, I love it. This is such a cheerful bag. So let me show you what this bag looks like on. So see if I can see. I'm 5'4", say small or medium. See? Great crossbody size, nice and big. So fun, again, for this time of year. If you're going out for Valentine's Day, if your kids are going to be going out with their friends for Valentine's Day, this is such a fun bag. Great to bring to school as well. So this is the crossbody version. I want to show you the wristlet version. This is the wristlet version. Let's put them up side by side. So crossbody, wristlet. The wristlet is a really nice small crossbody size, so that's actually what I turned it into. Instead of making it a wristlet, I just added 2 D-rings on the side. And then I turned it into a little crossbody, and it's actually really cute too. So see, if you just needed a smaller bag, I highly suggest turning the wristlet into a crossbody. It is a great, small, adorable, I mean, look how cute this is. It's just so stinking cute. So thank you so much to K.Azcona Designs for allowing us to use your pattern on the channel today. If you really love the heart shape, pay attention because she's coming out with a wallet. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna go with this. It's gonna be so good. I'm so excited for it. Thank you also to the B-Box for sponsoring today's video. If you're interested in joining the Bag Making Bee Club, I'll have a link down below in the description. It is a group of us who pull patterns, we pull material, we talk about all these fun things every month, and then we put it together in a box and we send it out to you, and it's a mystery until you get it. But we put a lot of love into these boxes. I mean, literally this month I put a lot of love into this one. It's so fun, isn't it? If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shout outs, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. If you guys want to see the wallet, when they come out with the wallet, let me know, because that looks really fun. I really want to make it, but I can't make it unless I can put it on the channel. So if you guys ask for it, then I'll put it on the channel. Alright guys, let's get started. So for this bag, I'm going to use about 1 roll of vinyl. I would suggest a medium weight vinyl. Anything too light is not going to hold much structure. Anything too heavy can be a little tricky to get those curves really nice. For my lining, I'll be using water resistant canvas. So this is about 1 yard of water resistant canvas. And then you're going to want some sort of firmer stabilizer. So if you're using any woven material, you're going to want woven interfacing on that for sure. But then for your more firmer stabilizer, you could use like a Decovil Light, even a Decovil Heavy, Peltex. There's a lot of options here. We're going to be using this sticky type of fleecy material. Yeah, it's kind of like a fusible fleece, except it has a sticky backing. We're going to use that for the gusset, but then I also did take out some of my own personal Decovil Heavy, and I'm going to use this for the back panel because the back panel, I really want it to have a lot more structure. The front panel is all clear vinyl, so we can't really add stabilizer to that, but I will tell you tricks on what to do to help with that. But yeah, this is just Decovil Heavy, and again, this is from my own personal stash. If you're using a thicker vinyl, you could probably get away with not using Decovil Heavy. But from what I've seen from other people, a lot of people like to use foam, and they really like to put it in the seams. All of that's going to be dependent on how your machine handles that kind of stuff. I don't know if my domestic machine would handle a lot of vinyl and foam and Decoville light, but if you're using an industrial machine, then go for it. All right, next up we have 2 cuts of clear vinyl, and we're gonna use both of these and some of the regular pink vinyl to build the front panel. I also have some of this fun glitter, and we're gonna put this in between the 2 clear panels, which is a really fun little trick that I see. I see my friend Amber do this all the time, and she's amazing at it. I'm not that good at it, but I'm gonna try to show you guys how I do it at least. For these clear vinyl cuts, they need to both be about the same size as the main panel here. That's my preferred way of doing this. Like I said, I'll walk you through it. Next, I have 2 zipper pulls. You could use 3 zipper pulls. I'm gonna be using 2, one for the main opening and then one for the lining pocket. However, if you want to double zip on the main, then use 2 zipper pulls on the main, use a 3rd one on the lining pocket. We have a little bag tag as always. We have 2 1-inch swivel hooks, a 1-inch slider, and 2 1-inch D-rings, and then we have a good amount of webbing here. This is just gonna be based on your preference for crossbody straps, usually about 56 to 60 inches. And then you're gonna need your zipper tape. I'm using number 5 zipper tape. One cut is gonna be about 31 inches long, the other one's gonna be about 9 inches long, 10 inches long. All right, so here's all the other stuff I'll be using today. Not a whole lot of other stuff, honestly. A bunch of clover clips, as always. I have some double-sided tape. I have Microtex 8012 needle. In my bobbin, I'll be using this Gutermann thread from Joann's. It's a polyester thread. And in my top needle, I'll once again be using my Tex 45 weight thread. This is color Fairy Floss. I have a lighter to clean up all the little loose ends, some sort of a marking tool that you can mark on fabric that won't be seen, but won't bleed or anything like that. And then a vinyl marking tool, and then a 1" by 6" ruler, and a stiletto seam ripper as always. The pattern writer was so kind to offer me advice to get like perfect dips on the top of that heart shape, and it is using staples and a hand sewing needle and thread. However, I actually don't have a stapler. That sounds wild, but I don't. I don't have a stapler, at least that works with material like this, and I don't have a staple remover, and I also don't have needles that are strong enough to do this. Most of the needles I use are very, very thin, skinny needles, and they will bend if I try to use them on this bag. So I can't show you how to do that perfectly. However, I'm going to link a video down below of Kasaya. She made this bag recently on her industrial machine, and she did use that method, and it did turn out pretty perfect. Now, she's also using a lot of foam and great stabilizer in her bag and industrial machines. So my bag's gonna turn out a little bit different anyways, but I am pretty happy with the way that the curve turns out just using regular sewing machines. So I'm gonna try to show you that today. So let's start with pattern piece A. For pattern piece A, this is gonna be the back panel for me. So I have my exterior material and I have my lining material. No interfacing on this. I will be adding the Decoville Heavy to the back of this, but I think I'm gonna try to add that later. Right before I sew it all together. You're gonna also want your 2 cuts of clear vinyl, but you can trace these out now if you'd like and cut them out, or we can sew them on and then cut them out later, which is what I'm gonna try today. So I have 2 cuts of my clear vinyl from the A pattern piece, and then I have my back exterior panel and my back lining panel. To go with that front panel, I have the heart frame applique, and so this is the exterior heart. Now, here's the thing. This is gonna go over the 2 cuts of clear vinyl. If you're not comfortable doing that, another option, if you still want to use the glitter and stuff like that, is to cut out another one of these panels. See, since these are pretty much the same thing, except this one has a cutout in the center. So cut out 2 of these, and then using the clear vinyl, cut out the center of this heart, and just kind of stuff the glitter in there and top stitch the clear vinyl over this. Now you will see the raw edges of the clear vinyl on the top, but you'll still get the same kind of effect. However, we're gonna try to do it a little bit trickier, and we're gonna have it open in the middle because I think looking through to the bag is a cool feature. Next up is pattern piece B, and we're gonna have 1 cut of our lining and 1 cut of our exterior. To go with that is pattern piece K, and it's the stabilizer for the gusset. You can add this ahead of time if you'd like. However, I think I'm gonna add it after I attach the D-ring connectors onto the gusset because I have to sew those on first. I think I'm gonna attach this after that and just slide it in right before we sew it all together. Next we have pattern piece C, which is the bottom gusset, and then you're gonna have 1 cut of exterior, 1 cut of lining, and to go with that, you're going to have the bottom gusset stabilizer. Next up we have pattern piece E, which is your cut of lining material. This is gonna be for the pocket in the lining, and then you have your little zipper overlay. I've seen a lot of people switch this to the exterior side on the back side, which is really cool. I'm going to stick with the pattern today. I think I'm just trying to be a rule follower or something, which is not like me, but I'm doing it today. I'm going to stick with the pattern, and I'm going to do the zipper overlay on the lining side, which is really cool, especially with that clear opening in the front because you can see it. Even though it's on the inside, you can see it from the outside. Okay, finally we have pattern piece J, which is going to be the stabilizer for the back panel. If you're doing a full front panel, not a clear front panel, then you'll have two of these, one for the back panel, one for the front panel. And then you're gonna have 4 cuts of your side D-ring connectors. This is an optional design feature, but I think it's really cool, and it's not really any extra work. The bag itself actually comes together quickly. So I do like this heart detail here. And then I have a bunch of binding. Now my binding is actually just 1-inch wide cuts of my lining material. Because my lining material is water resistant canvas, I can leave it raw edge. And so this is just width of fabric. So like 60 inches long, each one of them, and 1 inch wide. So I have 2 cuts of that for both panels. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is build our strap. Now I didn't show the rivet material in this beginning. You don't have to use rivets, you can sew it instead, but if you know me, you know I love using rivets on straps because it's just so quick and easy and it looks better. I'm a terrible top stitcher. So I have my full length of webbing, and I'm going to first melt down the edges of my webbing so that they're not fraying. And then taking one end of my webbing and my slider, I'm going to go from the bottom, so up from the bottom, over that middle bar, and then down the other side, just like that. And because these are raw edges, and I don't really like the look of that, I'm going to tuck it in once, about 1/2 inch over, and then I'm going to fold the whole thing over by about 3/4 of an inch or an inch, just so that the raw edge is like tucked in underneath the 2 layers of webbing and about touching that middle bar. And then I take my hole punch here, and I'm just going to punch a hole right in the center of that fold over, making sure I'm going through all 3 layers. And then I'll grab a rivet, insert it through the hole, add the cap on the back, and I'll set that in just a moment. I like to get everything else prepped first. So now keeping my webbing so the fold over is facing up, I'm going to keep my webbing nice and straight. So I go all the way to the other end, like that. I'm going to grab a swivel hook, and with the swivel part, the little hook part going down, I'm going to insert this onto my webbing and thread it through. And then again, keeping everything straight, I'm going to fold my webbing in half so that the raw edge comes up against the fold over edge. And on that same spot, I'm going to go up from the bottom once again, over the middle bar, and out the other side. So when I pull on this, I have my hook sticking out like this. I have my slider in the center looking all pretty. And then I have my raw edge over here. I'm going to take my other swivel hook, insert it so the hook part is on the top right side. And then once again, I'm going to fold over the webbing by about 1/2 inch and then fold it over again so that the raw edge meets up with the bar. And then I'm just going to punch a hole through all 3 layers. And then I'll grab a rivet and push it through and snap it in place. There we go. Once I double check and make sure it looks right, I'll grab my rivet press. If you like the standing rivet presses, I highly encourage you to use that. There's actually a whole bundle on Cam Snaps with the pink one and all the dies I like to use. It's the OklaRoots bundle. I'll have a link down below for it. This just happens to be one I have out already, so I'm just going to use this. And it also makes it easier for me to show you, but it is more work because I have to use my hands, and I know that not everybody has the hand strength. So if you don't like doing that, then get the bigger one. Okay, crossbody strap is done. You can set it to the side. Okay, next up is making our D-ring connectors. So grab your 4 little connector pieces, and we're gonna lay them right sides together. So buddy them up, partner them up 2 and 2, right sides together. Now, I really wanna make sure these stay in place, so you can glue these wrong sides together or tape them. I'm gonna tape them. I'm just gonna grab a couple pieces of double-sided tape. If they don't match up exactly because you're not an expert cutter and you didn't use like a Cricut or something like that to cut these out, that's okay. Just get them to match up as much as you can, and we can always trim them down after we stitch them together to clean them up. So this isn't one of those things that if it's not exact, then it's ruined. Okay, so I need to buddy them up like this. There we go. So now I'm gonna remove the paper off of one of them, and I'm gonna take another one that doesn't have tape on it and lay this one wrong sides together, lining up all the raw edges to the best of my ability. There we go. I'll do that with the other set. Okay, and now we're gonna go and top stitch only along the straight edges on each one of these. So the 2 straight edges in the very center, just top stitch along each edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You don't need to back stitch here, but make sure you leave the tails, so the bobbin and top thread tails at the beginning and the end of each stitch. Make those tails nice and long so we can tie them off. All right, once you have those sewn, flip them to this back, so where you see the bobbin thread, and just pull on your bobbin thread until you see a little loop with your top thread coming through. And then just use a stiletto to pull those top threads to the back with the bobbin threads. So do this for all of your beginning and ending stitches. All right, it's kind of a mess. But once you have them pulled to the back, you're going to just take one set of bobbin and top threads and just tie them in 3 knots, nice and tight. This is going to give the front a nice clean look. Once you have them all tied off, just grab some snips and snip the thread so it's close to the knot. All right, there we go. Now these are good to go. Now make sure you have your 2 D-rings, and I'm gonna grab some more double-sided tape. I'm gonna add some double-sided tape to the bottom edges here because those are moving around on me and I need them to stay put. So I'm gonna add a little bit of double-sided tape between the 2 pieces, just like this, just so I can get them lined up. The less things I have to fight with, the better. Pick your battles, right? So I'm gonna do this for all 4 ends. Okay, once you have these prepped, then you're gonna thread the D-ring on over the 2 ends, just like this, and you're just gonna fold the 2 ends back so the top stitching is on the top and wrapped around that D-ring. Then we're gonna grab some more double-sided tape because we really wanna hold everything together, and we're just going to add it in between the 2 sides that are gonna come together. So this is on the right side of the material this time. Just like that. How cute is that? So do that for your other connector as well. How sweet are those? And so if you wanted to edge coat these, you definitely could. If you feel like, wow, those are looking pretty wild, you can trim them up a little bit. Don't go too overboard with trimming them up, because before you know, you'll have a whole new shape. It's kind of like, you know, if you try to cut your own bangs and one side just gets shorter and shorter and shorter. Now, I'm not going to edge coat these, but this is something I would do if I was edge coating them, and it's something that just makes it look nicer. Sometimes your vinyl has a lot of fluffy bits on the side. I'm going to grab a lighter and just very quickly run it along the edge of this, and it just burns off all those fluffy bits to give it a smoother finish. This is especially helpful when you are edge coating because then you have a nice smooth look, but even just without edge coating, it makes it look a little bit nicer. All right, now you're gonna grab your exterior gusset and you're gonna mark in measurements from the edge. So the measurements on the pattern are there for you. They're not the same, so make sure you know that. They're not the same. One marks in further than the other. One thing to keep note of here is when we stitch these on, I made this mistake when I first did this, we're not stitching them on with the D-rings facing out. That's a common thing we've done with a lot of other bags. These D-rings have to both face in towards the center, like that. They're gonna face in, because this is the top of the bag here. So these have to go in. So once again, I'm gonna grab more double-sided tape. So much double-sided tape here. We just don't want anything moving around. We're gonna place this on the back of our connector. I'm gonna use 2 cuts again, just to make sure it doesn't wibble wobble around on me. All right, now when we lay this down, we want the line just, so if you were to have a straight line running parallel to the D-ring connector just below it, that's gonna match up with that mark that you made. So it's gonna cover it. So just do your best to keep it as centered and straight as possible. Remember, this is a really curvy bag though, so honestly, if it's a little crooked, if it's a little off center, it's gonna look fine in the end. You're not gonna notice it. So before I put the other connector on, I'm gonna stitch this in place. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna stitch. I'm just gonna follow the outline of this heart shape and then go straight across. The design, they make the heart shape. If I try to do that, it's not gonna look like a heart. So I'm just gonna go straight across, connecting the top stitching on the sides here, and then top stitch around the rest of it at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. A zipper foot's probably gonna be easiest for this. Okay, so there's one. It's actually not that hard to sew down. Now, if you get to this point, you're like, it shifted on me, and now I see some of the back of some of the other layers. This is what you can do. Carefully fold back your gusset, fold it all the way back, and you can very carefully trim down some of those layers to clean it up. It's not necessary though, but if you feel the need, if it's really bugging you, you can do that. So now I'm going to repeat that on the other side. So once again, I'm going to add tape to the back of my connector. And just like before, if I were to draw a line right along the top of this heart here, that's going to overlay the mark that I made on my gusset. And then just do your best to get it centered and straight. And once again, I'm going to top stitch around all the edges of the heart and then just straight across at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, there we go. Gusset is good. All right, so now let's work on the front panel. Let's do it. We can do it. We got this. So if you notice, when you buy clear vinyl, usually there should be some sort of a backing, either like a tissue paper or kind of like a film or meshy kind of material. You want to keep that there. So I'm going to lay this so that the clear vinyl is on the top, the paper's on the bottom, and then I'm going to take my heart here and I'm going to lay it right over the top just like that. Now what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm just gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna top stitch around the outer edge of my heart with it laying flat on my clear vinyl. The biggest challenge to that, because this is so loosey-goosey, is this moving around on me while I'm sewing it because I have sticky stuff here. You can add double-sided tape to the back if you'd like. You could add glue to the back of this if you'd like. I think I'm gonna try paper tape just to see if that will work. I'm gonna actually paper tape like the inside so that way I can just go around without removing the tape. And I'm just gonna pay really close attention to everything. With clear vinyl can be sticky. So I like to put Scotch tape or even the paper tape on the bottom of my presser foot so that way my metal presser foot doesn't stick to the clear vinyl. You shouldn't have any problem with the bed of your machine just yet, but that's also what this paper is for here. As long as you keep that paper behind it, this should not stick to anything on the bed of your machine. You take that paper off and you're gonna have a problem. So now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm going to baste or top stitch down around the outer edge of my heart at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so here's the thing, that method did not work because I don't know if you can see, but it is bubbling up real bad. And while it's not the end of the world, when I try to top stitch on the inside with all this bubbling, that's not gonna work. So I'm going to carefully seam rip this and I'm going to do it another way. Okay, so I'm gonna set this one that I sewed on to the side for now and clean up all the threads here. And if you're like, Jess, didn't you know that wouldn't work? No, I didn't. This is the 3rd time I've made this bag. And every single time I've made this bag, I've done something different. I thought maybe that would be easy. I haven't had a problem any other time, so it's just the way it goes sometimes. Okay, so what I'm gonna do instead is actually cut out this pattern piece. So this is my other vinyl that I didn't sew on. I can use this so I don't have to mess with going over those stitches again. And I am going to just trace around this. And I'm using a pen on the clear vinyl. You can use whatever you can see. I find the silver ink pen is really hard to see on the clear vinyl, so I'm not using that. I'm just using a regular pen. Once I have that trace, you can take the paper off because we want to use as much of that paper as possible. And now I'm just going to cut out the clear vinyl using that template. All right, let's try this again. I'm going to take my paper. I'm going to lay my clear vinyl over the paper. And I'm going to grab the frame, and I'm going to use clips this time to clip them together. So you might want to take it off the paper while you do this. All right, so I'm going to grab my paper. I'm going to lay this on top of my paper. And I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch around the, again, the outer edge of this at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, overall that was a lot better. We had one issue over here where it tried to do its own thing. I don't know, but it's okay. So now we're gonna remove the paper from the stitching. Okay, I went back to the sewing machine and unpicked this one spot here and then flipped it over and top stitched it from the clear side to try to flatten it out. It's still a little wavy, which I think is going to, we'll see how that works when we top stitch the inside. I think the reason I'm having this problem though is because I didn't cut out the frame correctly. I think my frame is a little stretched, so it's not quite the same size as the clear heart, which is why it's doing this. So just make sure when you cut out your frame, you're very careful to do it correctly. Okay, so now let's work on the glitter part. So I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do. So everyone has their own method of doing something like this. If you want to lay this on top of the other vinyl and like start top stitching around here and then stop and open this up and then pour a bunch of glitter in there, you can do that. Or you can just pour it in the center, which is what I'm gonna do. So if you haven't already, you should trace out your heart on here just so you know where the center is. This is a pretty fine glitter, so yeah, you don't wanna get all over your sewing room, but I'm just gonna kind of pour it right in the center in a little heap, just like that. You don't need a whole lot. Now, when I put the clear vinyl on here, it's gonna sandwich it in so I don't have to worry about it moving around, see? So now it's sandwiched in there just like that. And now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm very slowly and carefully going to top stitch along the inner edge of this. I wasn't so worried about top stitching or basting around the outer edge because that's gonna be in a seam and covered up with binding. But this inner edge is going to be noticeable. So yeah, I am a little worried about the ripples over here, but I think we'll be okay. I think in the end it'll be fine. But I'm gonna very slowly and carefully top stitch around this inner edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, making sure my glitter stays in the center. Don't shake it around on your way to the machine. All right, that worked out better than expected. So once again, I'm going to remove all of the paper and try to really clean up the back here, especially along the top stitching around the inside here. So that's holding all the glitter in place, you see? Isn't that fun? Now you have a nice little glitter and stick it up. And it's all nice and enclosed right here. I like that. So now I'm just gonna take my scissors and I'm gonna go around and trace around my heart, cutting down that back panel of clear vinyl. And now since we're using just the frame and some clear vinyl for the front of the bag, we don't have a lot of structure here. You know, we don't have the stabilizer or anything like that here. So to help keep it as structured as possible, I keep all 3 layers in the seam here. So I have my vinyl cut from the frame and then I have 2 cuts of my clear vinyl, and I'm going to keep them all in the seam. I'm not going to cut down my clear vinyl to make it smaller than the vinyl frame or anything like that. I want it all to stay together because that will make the seams a little bit stiffer, which will help with structure. How cute is that? Now if you'd like to go and baste this in place as well, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I'll wait. I'll see if it becomes a problem later, and if it does, then I'll baste it down. Otherwise, I'm just gonna leave it like this. All right, your front panel is done. You can set it to the side. Okay, so now let's build the zipper gusset. And so I'm gonna try to lay this out to the way I think it comes out in the end. The side of the gusset that has the longer space between the edge and the connector, I'm gonna have that on the right. And then I'm gonna take my zipper tape, and when my zipper closes, I'm gonna have my zipper going towards the left. So my 2 pieces are right side up, and then I'm gonna lay them right side down. And I think that will mean my zipper closes to the left when the bag closes. I hope. If not, I'm gonna put a pop-up right here saying do the opposite of that, okay? But yeah, that's how I think I'm gonna line it up. So now what we wanna do is grab some double-sided tape. 1/8 of an inch is gonna work best for this, but 1/4 inch is fine too. And we're going to lay the double-sided tape right along the right side of the top long edge of your gusset, and then remove the paper from that tape, and then take your zipper tape and lay it right side down on that tape. All right, once you have the zipper tape taped in place, grab another piece of double-sided tape and line this on the very top edge of your zipper tape, right along, right where you put the previous tape. We're using tape instead of basting. I'm not sure if basting would cause any problems. I know we have to deal with a lot of curves with this bag. All right, and then make sure you have your lining panel, and then remove the paper from this tape, and then take your lining panel and lay it right side down over the edge. All right, so now it's all tape basted in place. Now we're gonna sew along this edge here at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have that sewn, press both materials away from the zipper. So I'm going to start with the lining, just pressing it away, and then flip this over. And I'm finger pressing because I can't really iron my vinyl, so I'm just going to use my fingers. And I'm going to go along the edge as well, and I'm going to clip the raw edges together, wrong sides together. Okay, once you have that done, let's pull on this a bit and just press with our fingers. There we go. There we go. And just get it as flat as you can. I pretty much just work on this at the machine by pressing this down with my fingers at the machine. Clipping the raw edges together helps a lot too, so it can't get all willy-nilly on you. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and trying to keep this seam as flat as possible next to the zipper. We're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way along the gusset. Alrighty, gusset is top stitched. You can take all these clips off the edge if you'd like. Now trim down your zipper if you have it overextending like I do. And if you do trim down your zipper tape, don't forget to melt down those edges so they don't fray on you. Now grab your bottom gusset, lining and exterior, and you're going to take your exterior one, and on the right side over here, you're going to lay it right sides together, matching it up with the zipper and the bottom of the gusset. If you find that your exterior extends quite a bit, just line it up with the top of the zipper and trim down the bottom edge of the gusset. Now flip this over, looking at the lining side, and grab the lining bottom gusset and lay it right side down against the lining, and just add it in those clips, lining it up along the edges just like you did the exterior. Now we're going to flip this back, and now we're going to sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. So once you have those sewn together, press both bottom gusset pieces, the lining and the exterior, back so that they're wrong sides together. Make sure they're lined up on their raw edges over here. And now I'm just going to top stitch right along this edge on the bottom gusset at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now this part's kind of creative, it's cool. So take the lining, the bottom gusset, and pull it out of the way. We're just going to be working on the exterior, and then take the opposite end of your exterior gusset and lay it right sides together. So bottom gusset and the zipper gusset for exteriors coming right sides together, and you're going to clip these together. So you have 3 layers here. You have the gusset lining, and you have the exterior for the gusset and the bottom gusset. And now let's just go baste along this edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now laying it up like this. So the bottom lining gusset is down here on the back side, and the top is here. We're gonna take this folded edge over here, and we're going to roll it in really tight. Just roll it up as far as you can get it. And you're gonna roll this seam that we just sewed up over that little jelly roll you made, and you're going to take this lining bottom flap and you're going to flip it up so that it comes right sides together with the lining edge that we just basted. So you see that? So clever. But you got to get a really tight roll on the rest of the gusset in order to get it in there. Now once you have that clipped, let's sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. A zipper foot might be easiest here just because we do have that big roll here. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have it sewn, just pull the material out of that roll and flip this so the exterior bottom and lining bottom pull back wrong sides together. There we go. And get it nice and straight. You can flip it right side out, just like that. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch right along the seam here, keeping the other side of the gusset out of the way at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alrighty, and there's our gusset. So now when it comes to adding the interfacing, I know that this is sticky when you take the paper off, but I honestly like to leave the paper on. I feel like it's looked really nice, and it's a lot easier for me to just kind of shove this in here. So I'm personally going to leave the paper on. I don't see any problem with that. But what I'm doing is just shoving the long gusset interfacing in between the exterior and the lining of my long gusset panel, all the way around. So just making sure it goes, make sure it goes all the way to the seam, and then just tuck it in there and use some clips to close the raw edge with the lining and the exterior wrong sides together. I'm just sliding that stabilizer in as far as it'll go. So if you were using like Peltex or something that's not fusible, this is what you would do as well. You would just slide it in there. Okay, so I have the long stabilizer in there. Now I'm going to take the shorter one, and I'm going to tuck that into the bottom gusset here. And I'm going to clip on both sides of my bottom gusset because I don't have it enclosed on either side. So I'm going to close on this side. I'm going to flip this over to make sure that doesn't come out, and enclose it on this side as well. Alright, so now I'm going to baste along all my clipped edges. So I'm going to baste along the raw edges here of my lining and my exterior gusset, and I'm going to baste along both sides of my bottom gusset, all at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to just enclose everything. Okay, so now we're going to do the lining pocket, which is so cute. So take your lining back panel, and you're going to take your zipper overlay, and on the back of your zipper overlay, put 2 strips of double-sided tape running along the long edges. And then what you're gonna do is mark the midpoint on the top center of your lining panel and mark a midpoint on the top of your zipper overlay and use that tape to measure 1 1/4 inch down from that middle dip right here and tape this down in place. Now we can take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along the outer edge of our zipper overlay at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you want to start and stop someplace and not backstitch, you can just leave the tails long and then tie them in a knot on the back, just like we did with the connectors. Isn't that already so pretty? I love zipper pockets like that. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab my seam ripper and some scissors. First thing I wanna do is seam rip the center of that hole in the zipper overlay, because what we wanna do is cut out all of the lining material that's in this window here. So I find it easiest to look from the back side, and I like to peel up the vinyl so I don't accidentally cut it. You can just kind of carefully lift this up and cut the lining. It does not have to look pretty back here. No one's gonna see it. So if it is just a wild mess when you cut this lining, that's fine. The goal is you just don't want to cut, that zipper overlay vinyl piece. All right, so this is what it should look like from the front, and then on the back you see it's cut out. So once you have that done, grab some more double-sided tape. Double-sided tape is our best friend today. Double-sided tape is our best friend every day. Just add some double-sided tape right above the long edges of that opening. You're gonna do it above and below the long edges. Now grab your zipper tape, and on the back side of your zipper tape, can you guess what we're gonna do? More double-sided tape, yay! So right along the long edges of your zipper tape, add the double-sided tape. Now grab your zipper pocket panel here in the lining side, lay it right side up, and then grab your zipper tape and take the paper off of one long edge of your zipper tape and then just tape that long edge right side up, wrong side down against the right side of your lining panel. And you can see my zipper tape is longer than it needs to be. I just haven't trimmed it down, that's all. Once you have this taped in place, you can go ahead and base this down at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna go ahead and trim down my zipper tape so it's the same width as my pocket panel. If you use the tape, go ahead and remove the paper and take your other end of your zipper and lay it so the zipper's right side up, the lining panel's right side up, and we're going to just tape it down to the remaining short raw edge of our lining zipper pocket panel. And now we can go to the sewing machine and just base along that edge as well at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now take your zipper, and when the zipper closes, it should be going towards the left. So lay it just like that, so the zipper is up going towards the left, and then pull the pocket material up and away. And what we're gonna do is we're going to just cover the zipper with our opening in our lining just like that, but we're gonna just work on this one side at a time. So flip your lining over and remove the tape from the bottom edge. Remember, you have 2 long pieces of tape, just remove the bottom one for now. And then lay this back over and center the zipper tape. Get that pull out of the way. And then center your opening over your zipper tape. You wanna make sure the coils are going down the center. There we go. So now, with only the bottom edge taped in place, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're only going to top stitch right along the outside of that bottom edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Leave the tails nice and long at the beginning and the end, just like we did before, and tie them off into knots. All right, now take your lining and fold it down, just like this. You know, it might kind of fight you a little bit depending on the material you're using. Just do your best to get it nice and flat. There we go. So now your zipper coil should be nice and centered. Lift up the top edge of your lining and remove the paper from that tape along that top edge. There we go, and then gently put it back down and press in place so that it looks just like you want it to look. That looks beautiful. And now we're gonna top stitch along the sides and the top edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Try to make sure you can connect it to the bottom top stitching you already did. Once again, leave the tails nice and long and tie them in knots on the back at the end. All right, how cute is that? Okay, so as you can tell, we need to cut down this lining panel. So what I'm gonna do is just flatten it out, and I'm just gonna gently lift up the edge, and I'm going to just cut. Just like that. It doesn't have to be a perfect cut, it doesn't have to be a perfect measurement, anything like that. Just cut it down so it's not in the seam. There you go. All right, now you can lift these up and use some clips to hold these in place. You can see even my cut is sloppy. Man, everything's sloppy today for me. But you know what? I bet it's still gonna look cool. I bet this bag is still gonna turn out cool, even though I'll probably make every single mistake possible. All right, so once you have the sides clipped in place, we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're just gonna stitch around the sides, and then you can skip over the bottom and stitch around the other side. We're gonna do all this at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you back stitch whenever you start and stop. Alrighty, once that's all stitched, if you need to, you can melt down the frayed edges of your zipper tape, because I cut mine. Okay, the next thing I wanna do before I move on is I wanna add my little bag tag. I think this is so cute right underneath the pocket here. So I'm gonna grab some double-sided tape. I'm just gonna add it to the back of my bag tag. And I'm just gonna use my eyeballs to center this, which means you know it's not gonna be right. But I'm going to just center this about 1/2 inch below the center of my little zipper pocket here. And I'm gonna lift the zipper pocket out of the way while I do this. Now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine. I'm just gonna top stitch along all 4 edges of my tag at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. How stinking cute is that? Okay, last thing I wanna do for prepping is we wanna take these lining and exterior panels and lay them wrong sides together and baste them together, but I also want to get that stabilizer in there. So here's my Decoville Heavy. Decoville Heavy is fusible, so if you'd like to fuse it, you can. But I think I'm actually just gonna kind of place it in there and just lay this over and use clips to hold it all together. And that's what I'm gonna do. The thing about fusible or adhesive things is they really, really stick to the material. So sometimes when your material needs to be a little bit more flexible, like on a curvy bag like this, if you have stuff that's fused to it, it kind of gives it a ripply effect, kind of almost like a cottage cheese look sometimes. I don't know for sure if it would happen with this bag because I haven't tried it, but that's why, if you're like, why didn't you, use the sticky side of that sticky adhesive in the gusset, or the sticky stabilizer in the gusset? That's why. Why am I not fusing this? That's why. Because I just want the shape and the structure that it will provide, but I don't really want it to interfere with my material in any way when it's trying to move around. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna baste along all the edges of this heart at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. You can see my exterior is right side out. These are wrong sides together, and the Decoville Heavy is sandwiched in between. Before we get started, let's do some marks. We need to mark the front panel and back panel appropriately. So lay them both so that they're lining side up. So if you have the clear one, wrong side up. So lining side up just like this. Okay, so on the front panel, take your template and lay it upside down. So wrong side down just like this. And you're gonna mark where these little triangles are. See this little triangle here and here? But we wanna do it so that it's down. So the front panel is wrong side up, lining side up. Template is down, right side down. Line up all the edges, and then we're going to mark where those spots are. Okay, once you have it marked with some sort of a pen, that will show up. I'm gonna grab my scissors, and I'm just going to cut right where those marks are, a little triangle. Just like that, because I need to be able to see this on both sides. This is important. Okay, so the front panel is marked. Now, with your back panel, lining side up, take your template and lay it right side up, just like this. And do the same thing. We're going to mark where those arrows are. So first I mark with a pen, and then I take my scissors and I mark little triangles, and pretty much like cutting out that pen mark. Okay, now just double check. Take your back panel and your front panel and lay them lining or back sides together. So just like this, see? And make sure those marks match up. So the mark should be over here, a little bit higher on the left and a little bit lower on the right. See that? Okay, I know. I'm doing this because I made that mistake on the other bags. Okay, I don't know if you remember in the beginning, but I didn't baste down that second layer of clear vinyl. I think I am. I think I'm gonna go quickly to the machine. And I'm gonna baste this down just right over 1/8 inch seam allowance all the way around, so I don't have to worry about it becoming a problem while I'm sewing everything together. Okay, so now you have your gusset, your front panel, and your back panel all ready to go. We just have to put them together, which is it's just a couple more steps. However, they are the hardest steps. I'm going to give my machine a little TLC real quick. I'm gonna check the bobbin, I'm gonna oil it, change the needle before I move on to the next step, because I don't want anything getting in the way. This is gonna be hard enough. And I'll also give you the tips the designer gave me to get a perfect look right here, because this is the trickiest bit. This look right here. I am not going to be following those tips, unfortunately, because I don't have the resources for it, but I am going to tell you, and I'm going to provide you guys with a video link of K.Azcona following those tips and how amazing it looks. when she did it. Okay, so the tip from the designer, she says that when she does this, she draws the seam, so the seam, she draws where she needs to be stitching on the top and bottom curves. She draws those out first, and then she uses 2 pieces of double-sided tape to hold those parts together. I might be able to try that. And then she staples about 4 or 5 times in those areas. So the bottom and top curves, she staples them together so they don't move around. They stay there in place. And then she says she sews the entire bag at a 1/4 inch seam allowance except for this dip. So she doesn't sew the dip part. She only sews the rest of it at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then she says she goes in and she hand stitches the dip to get that perfect look. And so since she drew the seam allowance on there, she knows exactly where to stitch it. So that's a really good way to do it. I don't have a stapler that works for that. I have like a little baby stapler and it doesn't work with material. And I don't have hand sewing needles for that. My hand sewing needles are so fine. They're for English paper piecing. They're not strong enough to do that. So now grab your back panel and lay it exterior right side up. And then grab your gusset and flip it so it's lining side out, exterior right side down. And we're working on the side that does not have the zipper. So the seam here with no zipper, we're gonna lay that down and match up the seam between the zipper gusset and the bottom gusset with one of those marks that you made using the pattern template. Go around, connect the other seam with the other mark, just like this, and clip together at those marks. Now I like to mark the midpoint of my gusset on the bottom and top. I feel like that helps. So I'm gonna flip this over and I'm just gonna kind of tuck this in, kind of like a bowl. And I'm only working on the bottom of my heart right now, just that little pointy bit. I'm just gonna tuck it in there. I'm just trying to figure out what the very bottom of my gusset is. So the bottom of my gusset is going to be right here. So I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to cut right at the bottom of that gusset. And then I'm gonna remove the clips. Now I'm just gonna prep my gusset real quick. So using that midpoint mark, I'm gonna fold my gusset in half, just like this, and I'm going to find the opposite midpoint, and that's going to be where it's going to connect with the top dip of my heart. So keeping this folded like this, you can go ahead and mark those same midpoint marks on the other side of your gusset to help you whenever you're attaching this to the front. Okay, so returning to my back panel, exterior right side up, take my gusset, exterior right side down. We're working on the side that does not have the zipper. And then once again, match up the seam with the side marks that you made using your template and clip together there first. Do this for both sides of the seam. And then I'm going to find that midpoint mark again and I'm going to line it up with the very bottom of my heart and clip together there. There we go. And then I'm going to go to the top here and I'm going to line up the midpoint mark I made on my gusset with the very bottom of my heart right here. And I'm just going to kind of carefully clip around. I'm going to deal with this little dip in a minute. Okay, now we're going to go and we're going to clip the easy parts together. So kind of the straighter edges of the bottom of the heart. Let's clip those together, just up a few inches, that's all. And now, once we get to the rounded bits, I'm gonna start cutting into my gusset because I know I need this to spread out. So looking just at the side of the gusset, I'm gonna make little clips every inch or so with my scissors. Another option here is to cut down the seam a little bit with pinking shears. I know a lot of people like to do that. I don't have those. It's funny how many things it's like, oh, I would do that, but I don't have that. Like, I don't have a stapler. Who doesn't have a stapler? All right, so I'm gonna just I do quite a few clips here. You know, I guess if you've seen me a while, you don't know, I don't normally do a lot of clips like that. I don't clip into the material a lot, but we need it. So just kind of gently push the back panel in, kind of like a bowl, and then use some clips to get this set up. Don't worry too much yet about how am I gonna sew this. Don't worry about that. Just try to get it so that you don't have any big ripples or anything anywhere. No material folding over itself. Okay, I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna deal with the center bit last. So I'm gonna go back over to this other side here. And just like I did on the left side, I'm gonna create little clips about every 3/4 of an inch or so to help this gusset spread out. And then I just kind of gently just kind of tuck it in there and see what it wants to do. So it feels like you're talking to the material right now. Like, what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? Help me help you. I don't want to force you to do anything you don't want to do here. Gusset, I want you to be happy, but we need to work together. So how do we do that? Okay, we got that. We got the bottom. I'm going to actually make some clips in the bottom of the gusset too, so it can spread around that pointed corner a little bit easier. Now we're going to work on the top. So I'm going to unclip the top. And once again, I'm going to add quite a few snips into my gusset to help it spread out wherever it needs to spread out. There we go. I'm going to bring that midpoint back down to the midpoint of my heart. Clip there. And just carefully clip around all these curvy worvies. So many of them. All right, so make sure you have scissors next to you at the sewing machine, because if any of this starts pulling on you, you're gonna wanna rein it in. I'm not gonna use double-sided tape on this because my double-sided tape's not gonna stick very well to this material anyways. We're gonna sew this with the gusset lining side up. And you're gonna sew around everything at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I might actually, I don't know actually. I'm trying to decide where to start. I might start at the top of the heart here, past the dip, and then do the dip last. Or I might start right at the dip. I don't know. I usually I start down here by the bottom gusset and then work my way around like that. But this time maybe I'll start just before the dip and just do the dip first. So maybe that's what I'll do. I'm gonna start just before the dip and do the dip first and go all the way around, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Go very slow and use a zipper foot. All right, it's not the hardest thing to sew, but it's not easy. So let's just flip this out so we see where we gotta fix stuff, because I never assume I got it in the first try. Actually, it looks pretty good. One of the nicer looking seams I've done yet. Ooh, look at me, I'm getting better as I practice. There's a tiny ripple there, but it's not like, it's actually pretty clean cut and nice. I don't think I'm gonna mess with it, honestly. Oh my gosh, first try, no way. I mean, this is the 3rd time I made the bag, but first try, we're gonna say that. Wow, that looks really good, doesn't it? You look pretty. I like you. You look real good. So I think it actually kind of worked. Interesting, interesting. All right, so flip this back out. I'm just shocked that that actually looked really good. I'm really proud of myself. So now let's bind this edge while we're here. So grab your binding of choice. I usually like to start on the bottom. And actually, before we do that, I like to go down my binding strip and just fold it in half and press it in half. Long sides together, wrong sides together. Yeah, I know these are long strips. Your hand's gonna hurt, but it's gonna make binding it a lot easier. I mean, if you want, you can definitely use an iron for this step. You don't have to use your fingers if you have dexterity issues. Just go slow on this bag. I'll tell you, that sewing that back panel, it does hurt my left arm because I feel like I'm like holding so many things in place aggressively that my left arm does start to cramp up, so I have to stretch it out a lot while I'm doing that. But you know, you just take a break and get back to it. All right, I have that all folded, so now I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to wrap it around that seam, and I'm going to use clips to hold the material down. And you can see this is nothing fancy. I'm not doing any sort of fancy binding here. I'm just trying to cover the raw edges, because even if this doesn't look perfect, it looks better than those raw edges. Now, you shouldn't have too much of a problem going around these curves. It's the dip here that's hard with the binding. So when I get down to that, I just let my binding kind of fold over itself. I kind of like pinch it and just fold it over itself a bit, like that. I don't know if you can see, but I just have it pleated, pretty much. Fold it over, Just like, yeah, pinch it down, fold it over. It doesn't look great, but again, it looks better than raw edges. And as long as you can attach it somehow to the material, you're okay. If it's got a gap, that's okay. Like if the folded part doesn't tuck right against the seam, that's fine. So like up here, you know, we want the folded bits to tuck right against those raw edge of the seam. But if it doesn't do that down here, that's okay. It doesn't have to. Just as long as it somehow gets attached. Okay, once you get to where you started, let your ending binding overhang by about 1 inch and then trim it down. And then I just wrap it around. I don't tuck in the ends or anything, I just wrap it around. Okay, now I'm gonna stitch down my binding at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Whatever's easiest. This should be a lot easier than what you just did. And then up here, don't worry so much about seam allowance and stuff. Just try to make sure that the binding is attached to the gusset and the back panel. But for the rest of the bag, you want to make sure it's hugging it nice and tight, and just go around at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, stitching it in place. If you have bits of binding where it folds over itself and it plates, that's perfectly fine. It's not going to be noticeable. Oh yeah, that looks so good. So up here, I mean, I don't even know if it really caught the dip, but that's okay. It's covering the raw edges. It looks nice. That's what it's about here, guys. Just, it's all functional and it looks good. All right, so now we gotta do the front. Now, with the front, we're gonna be attaching it directly to the zipper. It is easier to sew the zipper than it is to sew the back panel with the more firmer gusset part. It is just easier. The zipper just has a little bit more stretch to it. However, you're gonna find after you sew it, you're gonna be like, I can't use it because the seam folds in on itself. I'll show you. That's why you have to bind it. You have to bind it or else it's not usable. So I'm gonna take my bag and my gusset and I'm gonna lay my front panel right side down. And I'm going to attach using those little triangle marks on my front panel, just like this with the seams on the gusset. And I'm gonna line up the very bottom tip with that midpoint mark. There we go. And then I'm just going to clip around the bottom gusset. And then I'm going to find the midpoint mark on my zipper tape. I'm going to line that up with the midpoint dip on the front panel and clip these together. And I'm just clipping a couple around it just to hold it in place, because as I'm like yanking on everything, this can move and I don't want it to. So I'm just going to leave that there. And then once again, I'm going to go up the sides here. And you might find it easier to open the zipper. And with the zipper open, now you just have to worry about the tape. You don't have anything getting in your way. So just go around, do the straight sections first, because it's easier, and you don't need those to spread out a whole lot. And then when it's time to do these curves, you are going to want to cut little slips into your zipper tape. I know it's not something we love to do. If you want to run a lighter over this after you get done trimming it, you can definitely do that to seal these edges, because we don't want these to fray. But we do need the zipper tape to spread out more than it already is. And just go around, spreading the zipper tape around those curves and clipping in place. And you might have to unclip and reclip quite a bit to really get everything to spread out the way you want. All right, once you have the top corners done, let's work on the middle. So with the middle, once again, I do still clip little tiny bits here, and they're no farther than 1/8 of an inch. They're not deep clips. It's just enough for the material to spread out just a little bit. So I think I'm gonna do what I did last time and start right before the dip. We're gonna be sewing it like this, so you can move the exterior out of the way. I mean, and shove it out of the way. Don't just, you know, delicately try to move it and then fight with it. Shove it down, okay? It is what it is. Just shove it out of the way. We don't need to deal with that. And I'm gonna start right here, right before the dip, and I'm gonna go along the entire bag here. I think I'm actually gonna sew this one at a 3/8 inch seam allowance because of that zipper. I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do 3/8 inch seam allowance. We'll see how it looks. I've been doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I'm gonna try 3/8 here. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so if you were to turn this out right now, let's just do it. Let's turn the whole thing out, and I'll show you how difficult the zipper would be. Because I personally love this look. Like, there's a lot of modifications out there. Everyone's changing it around to move the zipper into the middle of the gusset, and I think that looks amazing. I'm a big fan of it. But I also really like the zipper on the edge. I think that's cool. And if you just look at the front here, your zipper tape is going to just get stuck right in that zipper. This is why you have to bind it. So once we bind it, it's a lot easier to zip this because the binding holds it back. But I think this is gonna look good. I can't really get a good look at it until I bind it. But I can push it out here. I'll just push it out like that. Yeah, I think this is gonna look really good. I like the closer zipper. I think that that's gonna work nicely, hopefully. I do have a little bit of a pleat down here that I might go back and fix. Okay, I'm just gonna go fix this bottom bit right here because it is just folded in on itself. So all I have to do is seam rip right where it's pleated, just like this. And then I'm just gonna kind of smooth it out a little bit, move it around a bit, and I can just go sew over that spot, making sure I backstitch at the beginning and the end, and that'll help remove that pleat. All right, so now we just have to add the binding around the zipper, which is pretty easy. Okay, take your binding and make sure you fold it just like we did before. And I'm just gonna wrap it around the seam here. And I think I'm gonna actually, no, I'm just gonna wrap it around, and then when I'm sewing it, I'll be sewing it with the zipper side up so I can keep a close eye on making sure it doesn't, like, you don't want the binding to cover any of the coils or anything like that. Also, when you go around, your zipper tape, raw edge here, it's gonna wanna curl in like this. Make sure it's flat and that you are grabbing it with your binding. The point of this is to hold back that raw edge of your zipper tape so it doesn't try to get stuck in your zipper. And if you find it curling in a whole bunch, you can always trim into your zipper tape to help it spread out a little bit more. And just like before, at that dip, I just kind of fold the binding over on itself a bit just so I can get it tucked in there. So it's not straight binding. I had to fold it down a little bit. And when I say fold it down, I think like accordion. Like it's like see this? I fold it over like this and then go. So that way it kind of spreads out more. All right, just like before, once you get back to the beginning, just let it overhang by about an inch and cut it down. And I just wrap it right around where I started. Nothing fancy here. All right, so with the bag side up like this, we're gonna go top stitch this on. You can top stitch it on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance if you like, even though we did sew it on at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, whichever one you're more comfortable with. You just wanna get it in place. Either way, as long as it's holding back that zipper tape, you're gonna be good. Alrighty, so hopefully you saw that I keep that piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a full piece of paper, but just anything. As long as this whole thing isn't touching the bed, then it shouldn't stick. You guys, I'm getting tired. My words are not making sense anymore. Check the back after you're done top stitching this to make sure you caught it. If there's any sections where you didn't catch it, you don't have to redo the whole thing. Just go over that one section a little bit closer. It's gonna be fine. All right, let's turn this bag right side out. Moment of truth. Let's see how it looks. Oh yeah, that's looking so cute. So you might wanna go around and just pinch it a little bit. I find that right off the bat, it's kind of like, ah, and then after you massage it a little bit and let it sit like this, the vinyl will kind of stay folded and creased where you want it to stay folded and creased. Just make sure you take the time to shape it yourself first. Okay, so now just add our strap. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, I think I did my gusset wrong because I think that these two connectors are supposed to be more centered. That's how it was on the other one I did. So I'll make a note in the video of that. But honestly, I'm gonna show you this in just a moment when I wear it. I kind of like it like this. I think it looks really cool. So whether it's like this, a little off center, or if it's like my test bag where it's more on the same spot, I like either way, but I find with this one, sometimes it can easily flip upside down. And whenever I picked this one up, it just stayed like it's supposed to. So I think either way you do it, it's gonna be great. I hope you love making this. This is such a fun little bag to make. And I hope you like this like window here because it is so stinking cute. And I love all the little fun confetti. All right, guys, what did you think? Here, let me just tell you. I somehow turned everything around. So you see the D-rings? they're supposed to be at the same level, but I must have turned around the gusset. Like I said, I put a warning in there about that. However, let me just show you. So like this is one of the tester versions I made, and you see how the D-rings are at the same spot, which is fine. It looks great, honestly, and that's what it's supposed to be. But I'm just saying, I kind of like it like this. So when you wear it with the D-rings kind of off-centered, the bag, I mean, it might, it'll probably stay pretty straight, but it could tilt a little bit, which I really like versus staying perfectly straight. I like it a little bit cockeyed, kind of wonky like that. I think it's gonna look really cool. So if you do make mistakes with this bag, you can work through them. I mean, that's the whole video today, is all the mistakes we made, pulling out the seam ripper, trying something else. You can work through all of it. You don't have to just quit and give up. This is definitely a great bag to learn a lot on. You're gonna learn a lot about zippers. You're gonna learn a lot about curves, different types of curves. These kind of curves, where they go out like this, we always thought that was more difficult, right? Well, no, when they go in, that's pretty tricky too. So you're gonna learn a lot about all this and how to adjust and how to work with what you have. You know, like I said, so many people who are making this amazing bag are using industrial machines, and they're adding all this foam and Decovil, and it's so amazing, and they have these thick vinyl, it's just so good. I can't do that on my machine. My machine's not having it. It's not having it. So I have to work with what I got. And it still comes out absolutely beautiful. I mean, absolutely perfect. Look at this. It's amazing. I love this bag. So thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope you have a fantastic day. Have a great rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching today's tutorial. I hope that you are inspired to go make something and have a lot of fun with these patterns. If you're not already subscribed, please make sure you click subscribe down below. Also make sure you hit that little bell, the little notification bell. That's gonna make sure you're notified every single time we have a new video or when we go live. For even more fun content from OklaRoots, make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram. We do daily stories over there, which include unboxing, talks about books, other little mini tutorials, lots and lots of discussion over all kinds of things going on. You can also find us on TikTok and also on Reels for even more fun, kind of more random content. And if you really want to dive in for some behind the scenes content, free gifts, access to shop items before anybody else, and influence on upcoming videos, make sure you go check out OklaRoots over on Patreon. We have a lot going on over there, and it's a fun place to hang out, and you are directly supporting the OklaRoots YouTube channel. These videos could not be possible without the help of my patrons. So thank you so much to everybody over there. Thank you again for watching today's tutorial. I hope you enjoy the videos. Go make something.